End of day snack complete. 30 seconds to go. Haha, big bear hug. Now you're talking my language. We'll see how the chips fall. Yes, indeed. We will see how these chips fall once and for all. Once and for all. So about 9 seconds to go, at least until the 420 time frame. Don't be disappointed if there's not a big reaction at 420. And the numbers don't come out perfectly. There we go. There is the market response. So far up, but let's go ahead and take a peek at what the numbers actually are. Let's take a look. We have a release of earnings yet? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, we do. NVIDIA reported revenue for the third quarter end in October 26, 2025 of $57.0 billion. $57.0 billion, beating the estimates there by roughly $2.1 billion. Again, so our actual result is $57 billion, up 22% from prior quarter, up 62% on a year-over-year basis. Jensen is quoted as saying Blackwell sales are off the charts and cloud GPUs are sold out. Compute demand keeps accelerating and compounding across training and inference, each growing ... What do we have? Each growing exponentially. Great. In terms of data center revenue is $51.2 billion. $51.2 billion, up 25% from Q2 and up 66% from a year ago. For the quarter, GAAP and non-GAAP gross margins were 73.4% and 73.6% respectively. Okay. Earnings per share diluted, coming in at a 1.3, beating expectations there at a 1.26. EPS 1.30. Again, the quote from Jensen up here is Blackwell sales are off the charts and cloud GPUs are all sold out. Compute demand keeps accelerating and computing across training and inference, each growing exponentially. We've entered the virtuous cycle of AI. The AI ecosystem is scaling fast with more new foundation model makers, more AI startups across more industries and in more countries. AI is going everywhere, doing everything.
Man, I missed
all
that move.
At once.
Look
all
at that.
At once.
Suckly.
Okay. Repurchase of shares, $37 billion. $37 billion repurchasing of shares. Next quarterly cash dividend of 1 cent per share. Shareholders of record need to be on file by December 4th. December 4th. Okay. Let me see if I can bring this in to our price action here as well. The audio webcast has started, or at least is going to allow us to register. Let's register with a Q4 account. Sure, why not? Let's see. Create. All right, bear with me in the back. Let's see here. Let's just get this all figured out in the background. Okay. Aha, it's going to give me a... Let's try this. So far the reaction from price is higher. Price reaction is so far higher. Let's see. Bear with you, man. I'm just getting the webcast fired up here. And as soon as that is all set, we will start to pipe into that. Let's see, still holding high there. That orange line is the 20 SMA on the daily chart. All right. Okay, good. here. All right, this looks good. 15 minutes. Okay, yeah. 30 minutes to go until the webcast actually starts. So we'll get some audio from the good old people at NVIDIA as soon as that takes hold. Let's see if we can get the CFO commentary pulled up, perhaps. That would be solid to take a peek at. And we'll get the revenue trend up as well. All right. Let's pull this in. All right, how can I do this without totally gaffing what we have already pulled up? Let's go to add a source. Let's go with a window capture. All right, so hang tight as I bring this in and at least scale it so that you're not totally blown out from that. Okay, this looks fine. Let's put a little crop on this thing and then we'll be good. So hang tight. Hang tight. Let's go with the crop. Good. Let's try left crop, I don't know. 100? Sure. Right crop, 100? Sure. Bottom, no need. Top, let's just rip a little bit off the top. 50 points, maybe? Nope. Try 250? Great. All right, let's zoom into this bad boy. There it is. Doesn't look half bad. Not half bad. I do want to make it a little smaller, though. Something that looks like maybe that. Ideally, this would just kind of live underneath that. Oh, yeah, there we go. Now we're talking. Oh, my God, is this guy a professional or what? All right. There are your results for NVIDIA earnings thus far. Okay, so we can see here that we are, let me actually just see if I can crop that right side a little bit more as well. How do I do that? How do I edit the filter now? Edit. Edit filter? Filters. Edit filters. Good. Let's just take a little off the right. Let's say, I don't know, 500? More than that? 1,000? There we go. I kind of want this to kind of align with, yeah, it's close enough. Close enough. I can always just scroll like this if you want to see the percentage points on the year over year. All right, so main things to point out as we wait for CFO commentary and the actual webcast to start there. We could see revenue beats. Once again, you could see that forecast there at 54.9 billion. So a nice beat. What's that actual beat by? So let's do some quick math here. Does anybody have the, oh, no, it told us the beat. It was a 61% beat, which was solid on this guy over here, which is going to throw off, I think. Yeah. If I scroll up, there it was, record revenue up 22%. There it was. Nice. Nice. Let's go back over this. Nope, we don't want the registration. We want that. Okay, so all things considered, really strong move unfolding here in the market. I'm seeing clearly that NVIDIA has higher price action. Again, your daily 20 is starting to provide a little bit of resistance, it looks like, around that 194. So far, the initial impulse is not really doing much to get to the upper edge of the market maker expected move. I mean, I would have expected 199.29 if it was a outstanding, oh my goodness, right, we're going to the moon type of move. The futures are probably still trading that final period here. We could see NQ futures here in the bottom right are ticking higher on the NVIDIA earnings, which is not too much of a shock. One thing I would reinforce, if I just bring this back to a, this over here is a 5-minute with after hours turned on. This on the right-hand side is the daily chart. The daily chart isn't really, if we forecast a possible open in here around 190, 135, it's not really doing anything to substantially push, NVIDIA up and over any key levels, right? If we were to break out over this, that would be compelling. That was that Monday gap up in the closing high from what happened, was that 2 weeks ago now, right? So up and over 200 gets interesting because that also pinches out market makers on the call wall open interest side, which, as we know, closed out around 157,000 contracts. So 200 is really the number to beat. If you could beat 200 on NVIDIA, I think that you might go for, we could talk about this concept, right, of a potential, what would we call it? Maybe loosely a gamma squeeze, right? Gamma squeeze would be if the market makers have to cover, let's just say that they're technically net short. So delta wise, they are net short. If they're going to cover their net short delta, they have to go out and buy shares to neutralize here. If they're short calls, let's say calls at 200. Okay, so that is a possible theme to be paying attention to if NVIDIA, throughout the duration of the conference call, can get up and over 200. That would be pretty cool. Pretty darn cool. I did want to take a look at the segment reporting of NVIDIA. So let's scroll down on this and see where our platforms are. Just looking for any big outliers on quarter over quarter gain in the revenue segments here. It looks like quarter over quarter compute is pretty normal. Everything looking kind of normal. Professional visualization up 26% gets a little interesting. Automotive is only 1%. It did kind of get an uptick on the prior. It's kind of interesting. But overall, the segment seems, I mean, compute moving the way it's moving, just insatiable demand for AI training, right? And building those data centers out. So all things considered, not bad here on the summary look for NVIDIA's earnings. And this is, again, direct from the site. This is not, this is nothing fancy-pantsy. This is just direct from NVIDIA themselves. I think that this, which I know is going to look funky on your side, this just shows us the trend of revenue, right, by millions. So think billions, 51 billion data center there versus prior 41, so on and so forth, gaming, visual, auto, so on. So that's fine. That's not really that great. I think this is kind of where we want to stick for now. And when the commentary starts up from the conference call, we will pipe that in. We'll get the audio in here. We'll see what Jensen has to tell us in terms of how all of that is unfolding. Excuse me. Jump over here. Can I copy this link real quick? I want to just make sure I can have this on two screens. They won't start until 5 p.m. So we got 30 minutes to kill, basically, ahead of the actual call from Jensen. I'm going to grab this, and let's just go back over here. Good. Put this in another tab, just in case there's some kind of update for it. Let's do that. Great. And we'll get the update when it's ready. Okay, some other things to talk about with NVIDIA. Once again, we could talk about kind of what's going on with the sort of story, the fundamental story and backdrop of NVIDIA, right? Data center is their primary revenue source, and it grew substantially, right, at a good clip on this quarter over quarter. Blackwell chip in the next gen is kind of what we want to hear more about from Jensen today, and whether or not they'll be fulfilling this $500 billion inventory buildup with the Blackwell.
My work is easy because I use Fixer. Here's how I clear my inbox in minutes. I start by checking how Fixer has organized my inbox by priority. Because Fixer's learned my exact writing style, I just scan the automated drafts, make a couple changes, and hit send. These features alone save me an hour every day, and I reinvest that time in high-value work streams that generate revenue. Fixer also takes great meeting notes. I always share them with my team. We've never been more aligned. You can try it free at fixer.com today.
And sort of more on what that next chip is. What else could we talk about here? Maybe if we get any color from Jensen on product refresh cycles, we could think about, what their orders look like with current customers. Are new customers or are current customers reordering chips in a short enough time frame? Or, right, what's the risk there? Well, Michael Burry gets proven right, and depreciation is being overstated, right? And these companies might not be worth as much as they're saying they're worth. Another thing that could be addressed in the commentary from Jensen to come here in the next, 25 minutes or so to go, is any pressure from power costs, right? This is a big problem we're seeing with OpenAI, where Sam Altman continuously makes these claims that they're going to invest trillions of dollars in energy, but just the energy doesn't exist, literally, to make the training. So we'll see if Jensen has any input to that. Obviously, we've seen some headlines recently on the reopening of the nuclear plant. Why am I blanking on the name? How many miles? How many miles on that island? 3 Mile Island, right, is going to get reopened. And just generally, we've seen names like Oklo. We've seen this renewed interest in the nuclear front. Alongside the other theme there is natural gas, right? Natural gas seems like the next phase because nuclear is still somewhat far away, at least to power these data centers the way that they're being envisioned. Natural gas is the thing that's here and now that could potentially power it, right? That's right, 3 miles to go to that island. So that is that's kind of part of that story as well, and a possible pressure for power costs, right? We'll hope to hear about China and whether or not the AI export controls. Remember, we actually got a headline today about AI export controls to China, and unnamed firms, this was an article from Axios, reported that there's going to be a meeting in Washington, right, about software export controls to China on this AI front. You have to imagine that NVIDIA is at the center of that conversation, right? Addy to you says the market is going down. Where's the market going down? You tell me. Point to where the market's going down on the screen in front of us. I don't see it. I don't see it. Little secret, I had a second Mandarin Orange on my desk, and I will be indulging in that right about now. A little bit of a pullback here on the NQ, but not much. Not much. Market's not going down hardly. We are higher on NVIDIA earnings with a solid beat. Once again, you can see the numbers there on the screen, beating the EPS by about 4 pennies. That's a nice beat. The revenue estimates, big beat there, coming in at 59 billion. 59? What was the number? I need more screens. Need more screens. 57. My apologies. 57. Margin remains good. Margin at 73.4%, improving actually. And data center revenue really expanding at a solid clip. So I don't see the market going down. I see the market reacting favorably so far to NVIDIA earnings. Now, what the problem is, right? The problem is what happens on the conference call. What does the forward guidance look like from NVIDIA, right? That's the problem. If the forward guidance here does not come out favorably, and Jensen sort of talks things down, says, demand is good, and, if he doesn't really talk it up, like, oh my God, and it seems like he did, based on the commentary thus far, that's sort of contained within, what was that, the report here. AI is everywhere all at once happening now, right? That was sort of his final line in the written piece, at least. So I would imagine he's pretty upbeat about the conversation there, and we'll kind of see where it goes. But, any downplay of future demand or lack of customer life cycle, right, is probably going to be perceived as poor forward guidance, and that's where the stock has the risk of going down, right? We saw the same thing on Palantir. Excuse me while I munch on this Mandarin. If I bring up Palantir, PLTR, and we're just hanging out, we're just having a good time. It's not that serious. The market's closed. I'm not doing any after-hours trading. It is what it is. Let's go out to Palantir. Let's take a peek over at the earnings post-market move and what we saw here, right? So there it is. There goes the numbers. Numbers look really good, solid, and then when the guidance comes out, whoa, that's where everything falls apart, right? Even though I would argue Alex Karp offered some pretty upbeat guidance. So in my view, that Palantir there could offer the sort of framework, if you will, as to what may, not guaranteed, but may happen here with NVIDIA. If we just go back over to NVIDIA, right? Oh, crazy zooms. There we are, just kind of sitting and hovering at the daily 20 SMA, 193. If we take a look on this daily side, let me load the same study set over here. Let's go load study set. There we go. And let's take a peek. There we go. That's not half bad. We're just opening right here. Right, this is the forecast open on NVIDIA. It's not a big blowout gap up. Oh my God, we're gapping to new record highs. Not at all. Not at all. So solid company, killer numbers, and it's just all about the guidance walking forward. I'm going to take another bite of this Mandarin, and then we'll go take a look at AMD. We'll look at some competitors just to see how they're acting, or I should say reacting, in the after hours as we, again, gobble up some more time before that 5 o'clock conference call from the board, the CFO, and listen to Jensen. I think, you know, what you really care about here is how they talk about the forward look. That's it, right? What's this Johnny Hayward saying? It's just all caps. It's just screaming. Okay. Little euphoric, but that's all right. Beat and raise stock lifts. It looks like 56% of the vote voted for that, and so far you're right. So far you are right. All right. Finishing second half of Mandarin. Let's go to Oracle. We don't need 90 days anymore. We can just work with a 5-day chart. That's fine. Oracle so far getting a little bit of lift. Let's go to AMD, competitor. A little bit of lift here on AMD. Let's try TSM. TSM will be solid here because what this does ultimately is it continues to give TSM work to do, right? If NVIDIA is going to come out and say, oh my goodness, we have all these orders in the queue, we've got $500 billion of backlogged orders to build out inventory from, right? What does TSM say? Thank you very much. Send those right over here, right? Listening to chomping is worse than something like handy. Okay. Can you hear that? Is it showing up on the mic? If it is, I'm sorry. I didn't think it was that sensitive, but maybe I'll back up. And then I'll take a look at TSM. Let's go to, I don't know, ASML. Let's just run through, how about this? Let's just run through the semiconductor watch list. My apologies on the biting. Let me come back over here. Shouldn't be able to hear it now. And if you can, then turn your headphones down, right? You're encroaching on my privacy. All right. Now it's all gone. I promise it's all gone, but we do have to wash it down with some water. Otherwise, that would be no good. All right. Water has been washed, mandarins have been chomped, and we're going through the watch list. So we don't need so much expansion bars. Let's go to the time axis. Let's just drop this to 50. Great. All right. AMD, we know, is slightly higher. We just saw TSM higher as well. This is more mirroring the move of NVIDIA, and we know that's the case simply because all orders will go to TSM to get fulfilled, basically. Broadcom getting some lift here is interesting as well. I do like Broadcom lifting over 358.25. If I just quickly go to a daily chart, I'm just going to go daily here. Actually, what I should do, that was a stupid thing to do. Let's go back to a 5-day, 5-minute. That's fine here. Let's just go full screen daily. There we go. That makes good sense. Take a peek at this right here, right? Take a peek at that. If we can gap up and over this previous pivot, if we can get over that daily 20, you could have AVGO, Broadcom, starting to get some pre-earnings lift on sympathy to NVIDIA. Now, this is all contingent upon the guidance that comes out in just a moment from Jensen. We've got about 15 minutes to go. So we'll watch this very closely, but this is a really interesting chart. Really interesting chart. It's been horrible inside of this box, but can it clarify on a break up and out? That would be the interesting watch there. So that is Broadcom. Let's go to SMCI. SMCI getting some lift here, just trading near today's high. How does the daily chart look on SMCI? Terrible, abysmal. I wouldn't touch this with a 90-foot pole. You could see these alerts that were overhead. Don't even need them anymore, but, you know, this is horrible. I would stay far, far away from SMCI. There's no reason to be trading that. Let's go to MU. Micron on the 5-minute side in the after hours, getting a little bit of lift, coming into this equal high. The next watch on MU, if we go to the daily chart, would be a remount, if you will. You could call it remount, recapture, whatever you want to call it. Remount this daily 20, get back over this area, and try to build out a higher low. Right? That is what we're thinking on that. So MU is more in that memory space. They play a slightly different role than the NVIDIAs of the world. So that's interesting. Another one in this sphere of influence, as we've been talking about, is the SNDK. SanDisk in the after hours, how's this performing? Yeah, mirror image, right? Mirror image to that MU. Nice look over this previous day high. I'm curious to see if the daily chart can sustain. You've got these longer lower wicks building out a nice base here in SanDisk. Honestly, this could turn into a flag. This could turn into quite a nice flag on SanDisk as we're thinking about, how this all plays out for the AI trade, right? Memory is a big deal right now. So SanDisk being a big player in that space alongside MU, this trend is stronger. This consolidation looks better. SanDisk not bad over these highs, right? Clearly over the daily 20, whereas the MU chart, right, has to remount it and try to get lift from the earnings here. We just take a peek, right? There it is. There is your 20 SMA. Okay, so 230.25 MU, SanDisk, WDC is the other player in the space. Notice how this looks a little bit more head and shoulders-esque. The consolidation isn't as clean. If you're going to look for something in this space, SNDK is the place to be. SNDK is stronger than this, right? Reason being is this consolidation is more head and shoulders-esque. You have this clean lower high, even versus MU. It probably goes SanDisk, WDC, and then probably MU down here. Maybe we could say, what's the other one? STX? Yeah, this one's worse. This one's even worse. Under the daily 20, I'd stay away. Continuing along, let's take a peek at Qualcomm. Qualcomm has a pretty interesting daily chart here. Reason I like the Qualcomm daily, let's quickly look at the 5-minute, see if anything's happening after hours. A little bit of lift on sympathy, but nothing direct on Qualcomm. Remember that they're not really in the AI space until that announcement from the other day here, which, by the way, here's something interesting just as a general takeaway on the technicals, right? This rips on that AI headline. It doesn't just retrace like 60% and then hover here, build a base, and then go. This retraces more than 100% of that AI headline from Qualcomm. So I don't know about you, but that does not give you a warm and fuzzy feeling inside about Qualcomm being, really adopting or adapting into this phase of semiconductor. It's just not it. Not it at all. The only thing you could say it has going for it is if you go to the weekly chart, coming into a major weekly high that could potentially act as support here at 163. That's the only thing on Qualcomm that I think is worth even talking about, right? Aside from that, horrible. It's one of the laggard semiconductors, just like ARM. Take a look at this ARM weekly chart. You need to be breaking the new all-time highs on ARM to get out of this weekly consolidation before I would even think about trying to do something here on ARM versus any of the other semis. Pre-market, or post-market, I should say. It's getting a little bit of lift here, but not nearly enough to get the job done and, up and out of that weekly range. As a matter of fact, this green line that you see on the screen here, that green line is the 200 SMA, right? There's hardly any room for a trade in here as you're just kind of chopping around the 200. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to trade long into these upper wicks? I don't think so. Is you going to trade maybe long off the bottom end of the range, trying to work your way towards the midpoint mean reversion here? Maybe, but it's not my favorite. Definitely not relative strength here on this ARM chart. Intel. Let's see how Intel's reporting, or not reporting, but rather reacting after the bell. No new high on Intel. That's the notable takeaway on this one. Chris K says ARM is the best range trading stock. Could be. I'm not much of a range trader myself, but hey, knock your socks off if that's your thing. Hey, I'm glad you've been able to identify it, and hopefully you're trading it well. Holding down the fort in ARM for us. You're our TB representative over on the ARM's options chain. Texas Instruments, unchanged here. Nothing to talk about or do there. Applied Materials. Please check USD Semiconductors in all caps from Ferrer or Ferrisvisser. What are you talking about? USD Semiconductors. We're looking through the semiconductor watch list right now. Let's not get fired up after 4 o'clock on a weekday. All right, no need whatsoever. We've got about 12 minutes to go until the CFO commentary, and we can pipe in some audio from the good folks over at NVIDIA. No, we do not want to listen to lobby music. Do not play. Okay, just checking that on another screen there. Applied Materials, right? This is looking all right. Applied Materials. Let's go to that daily chart. Let's take a closer look at the daily. This is not bad. This is not bad. I like how on earnings this gapped down but recovered all of it to unchanged over a very short span of time. So Applied Materials is not a bad look here if it can consolidate back in this range and put in higher lows at the daily 20 over this 230.65 spot for Applied Materials, right? ADI Analog Devices, really nice consolidation, building out some kind of wedge. However, you got earnings coming up, so this is kind of a dice roll ahead of earnings, right? Classic wedge pattern, of course, but what are you going to do, right? Ahead of earnings, probably not much. After hours, I mean, the volume is really thin, but slightly higher. Marvel, I was asked about Marvel today. I would just stay away from it personally. Marvel on the daily chart will show you why. If you just maximize this guy, I mean, just trading right into this slop. Right into the slop at 83.44 currently, which is actually underneath the slop. So you still haven't even retaken the daily 50. Daily 200 sloping in the downward direction. Just not a pretty sight here on Marvel. I would tend to think that this is on the avoid list more than the actionable, watch list, right? So that is the MRVL. Let's go NXPI. Anything good over here? Waterfall. How is the post market doing though? Nothing worth talking about. On semiconductor, slightly higher but unchanged from this range. This, if anything, is a short. Take a look at this thing. Take a look at this massive cliff here. You're under the daily 200, 20, and 50. If this can get some more acceptance underneath this big shelf, you're probably talking about on semiconductor short to the origin of this breakout, which is 42.40 here, right? That is top of mind in this particular look. Okay, something boom that looks like that. Can we get to 42.40 right around in there? All right, so on looks weak. I would stay, if you're looking for shorts, on would be the place to look. ASML, nice high and tight consolidation. The weekly chart probably looks great here. Yeah, the weekly is pretty good. I would probably start thinking about a possible break up and over this open, this high. What's that? I mean, close to it. Let's just call it 1100. 1100 on ASML is what we're looking for there. If we go on down to the after hours, you can kind of see how we're slightly higher. Lam Research is the last one I have on my watch list, at least. We do have some upside lift. I've never really been fond of trading this. I think I maybe have traded this once in my entire trading career. I don't think it's not a usual suspect, but it's interesting, right? Just in terms of its role, so to speak, in the semiconductor world. So getting a little tighter here as we kind of consolidate, but not really clean. I don't love this. This chart looks a little sloppy. Looks a little sloppy with the overshoot of the 20. I'd stay away. All right, let's go back to NVIDIA and see how the price action continues to settle out over here. We are trying to get a hold up and near the daily 20 SMA. That's the orange moving average. It's the orange line that you see on the screen here. It's the same orange line. This is a weekly chart. Is this a weekly chart? No, this is a daily chart. It's the same orange line that you see right here. So really not much more commentary to add to NVIDIA until Jensen starts speaking and we get some more reactions from NVIDIA and we can at least listen in on what they have to tell us and how we should expect things to go forward in terms of growth, the whole 9 yards. Okay. Let's from my actual math that you can see translated to the charts back over here. If that changes, we will update it. One thing that I would want to point out to you guys is that the 200 net short calls, they do not want price over 200. There will try to be a pin underneath 2.77. Closes right about now. There's the bell. Ding, ding, ding. You on this after hours stream. We'll keep our commentary to a minimum on anything from Beth Bezos and AWS servers going out on the East Coast. That's all I'll say. In the meantime, let me just throw some headphones on so that way when and if they start speaking, I can kind of hear what's going on and I'll be able to pipe in the audio to us here. If it's worth taking a look at, they usually don't have a presentation. It's just one slide, but we'll keep an eye on it. Okay, no broadcast yet. Settings. Device permissions are needed. I shouldn't need device settings. Let me see if I can hear this. I can. Okay, I can hear it. You guys can't hear it. I don't want to play the music, which will just bore you to death. We don't want that. But when they start speaking, I will pipe in. What's her name? I forget her name. Who's the CFO? CFO of NVIDIA. What's her name? Colette. That's right, Colette. Because we always hear Jensen say, "Well, thanks, Colette," and then he takes over. Rightfully so. All right, when they start speaking, like I said, I got the headphones fired up, and we'll pipe in any audio when required. John Baker with the 5 in the chat. Appreciate that. Thanks for your analysis. Could you take a look at AMKR? AMKR. Is this that? No, this is Amkor Technology. What's this all about? Amkor Technology is gapping up, sympathy to NVIDIA news. Kind of looks like it's trading similarly to the semiconductor cohort. I don't know much about this name at all. AMKR. I've seen it on a couple of scans recently, but I can't say I'm an expert. So AMKR. What do they do? Semiconductor product packaging and test services provider. Company has been headquartered in Arizona since 2005 when it moved from Pennsylvania. That's not really important, but they are in the business of semiconductor product packaging and test services provider. Okay. They design, package, and test semiconductors for other companies. The companies offer a RF antenna design incorporated directly into or onto a chip, CMOS imaging sensors, and a flip chip packaging with copper pillars, with copper pillar bumps. Okay, so they're semiconductor related. They do stuff for semiconductors and the actual build out, the physical product, it sounds like. So if NVIDIA reports solid numbers, it just means I'm sure they have some kind of partnership or they're doing something with them. Let me see if I can pull up any news related to AMKR. Maybe we'll just do this. Gadget, live news. Let's see. Semiconductors are trading lower. Amkor Technology spreading upcoming conferences. Not really what I was looking for there. I was hoping for some more stock-specific headlines in that, but it doesn't look like that's the case. We'll let it ride for now. It's trying to trade higher with the group, which is good, right? You want to see it trade with the group. You don't want to see it diverge too much. This reminds me of Cadence Design Systems. It's in the peripheral of semiconductors, so CD&S, right? Cadence Design, probably moving slightly higher, not huge, but this has actually been more beat up. Ooh, under the daily 200 on Cadence. Okay, so a move higher there is just kind of a relief bounce. I wouldn't really think that it's all that powerful of an uptrend reversal on CD&S if that is to put in a move higher with the group.
The world's first titanium nonstick pan. It's going to blow your hair back. I'm Mike Pagale, 3 minutes.
Near this 194 spot, daily 20 SMA. Remember, 200 is the number to beat based on options perspective, but positioning really is the word I'm looking for. Options positioning there. Should probably take a look at the daily chart of that AMKR just to give you a little bit more insight there. AMKR. Let's quickly do this. We've got about 2.5 minutes to go until the Jensen speech or CFO commentary. Let's go daily chart full screen for a moment and just take a peek. I'd really want to see price over this, right? So over the daily 20 as well as this breakout point is your sort of secret sauce on AMKR. If you could get here, that would be supremely helpful for the stock. Right now you're not fighting this overhead supply trapped buyers from the top. You're more so trading in alignment with the possibility of an uptrend reversal. Right, you're avoiding, really what you want to avoid is just this, right? Head and shoulders, classic. So dangerously on edge. Looks like NVIDIA earnings will help it a little bit, but not out of the woods yet on AMKR. Okay, let's go back over here. Continue to keep eyes on this NVIDIA. And let's see what they've got for us on the conference call. Coming out in about 60 seconds until they start, or until they're supposed to start. Let's see what they have for us here. MC with the 10 in the chat. Thanks for the insight. What do we think about Archer and ZS? ZS earnings next week. Thanks for the 10 in the chat. Yeah, with 60 seconds, we'll go take a brief glance. Let's go ZS. So I don't really have any grand... This is always my take. I'm not your guy for earnings, right? I could sort of talk myself through what's going on. Like we can talk through the beat with NVIDIA earnings. That's fine. But on something like ZS, I have no real idea as to what earnings will actually look like here. So I'm not your guy to predict the number. I'm not a fundamental analyst. I'm not tracking balance sheets, revenues, cash flows, any fundamental filings from ZS. I would say the technical chart looks okay. I'm technically long quite a bit of ZS actually from the end of last year. If I come into here, this base breakout on ZS, I got long on this consolidation. So this is a nice longer term hold for me. I'd love to add at the previous pivot high, hence these alerts. I'd love to add in here at the daily 200, 260. And then I really need to know if this is, let's say on earnings, it dies and is under 216. I'll have to take an L on it. I'm not forecasting this by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just talking, in terms of that's kind of why you see this chart the way it is. So ZS, I like the chart. I like the company. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know exactly what's going to happen on earnings. We do have 5 o'clock on the clock. I'm not seeing anything yet or hearing anything. Okay, they changed the slide. Okay, we're starting. We are starting. I'll get to that other one in just a second. All right, let's crank this thing up over here. How come I can't hear her? How come I can't hear you? Help. Settings. Update permissions. Come on. Really? Okay.
Call is being webcast live on NVIDIA's Investor Relations
Here we
website.
go. You guys can hear now?
The webcast will be available for replay until the conference call to discuss our financial results for the fourth quarter of fiscal 2026. The content of today's call is NVIDIA's property. It can't be reproduced or transcribed without our prior written consent.
Can you guys hear now?
During this call, we may make forward-looking statements based on current expectations.
Okay.
These are subject to a number of significant risks and uncertainties, and our actual results may differ materially. For a discussion of factors that could affect our future financial results and business, please refer to the disclosure in today's earnings release, our most recent Forms 10-K and 10-Q, and the reports that we may file on Form 8-K with the Securities and Exchange Commission. All our statements are made as of today, November 19th, 2025, based on information currently available to us. Except as required by law, we assume no obligation to update any such statements. During this call, we will discuss non-GAAP financial measures. You can find a reconciliation of these non-GAAP financial measures to GAAP financial measures in our CFO commentary, which is posted on our website. With that, let me turn the call over to Colette.
Thank you, Toshiya. We delivered another outstanding quarter with revenue of $57 billion, up 62% year over year, and a record sequential revenue growth of $10 billion or 22%. Our customers continue to lean into 3 platform shifts, fueling exponential growth for accelerated computing, powerful AI models, and agentic applications. Yet we are still in the early innings of these transitions that will impact our work across every industry. We currently have visibility to $500 billion in Blackwell and Rubin revenue from the start of this year through the end of calendar year 2026. By executing our annual product cadence and extending our performance leadership through full stack design, we believe NVIDIA will be the superior choice for the $3 to $4 trillion in annual AI infrastructure build we estimate by the end of the decade. Demand for AI infrastructure continues to exceed our expectations. The clouds are sold out, and our GPU installed base, both new and previous generations, including Blackwell, Hopper, and Ampere, is fully utilized. Record Q3 data center revenue of $51 billion increased 66% year over year, a significant feat at our scale. Compute grew 56% year over year, driven primarily by the GB300 ramp, while networking more than doubled, given the onset of NVLink scale-up and robust double-digit growth across Spectrum X Ethernet and Quantum X InfiniBand. The world Hyperscalers, a trillion-dollar industry, are transforming search, recommendations, and content understanding from classical machine learning to generative AI. NVIDIA CUDA excels at both and is the ideal platform for this transition, driving infrastructure investment measured in hundreds of billions of dollars. At Meta, AI recommendation systems are delivering higher quality and more relevant content, leading to more time spent on apps such as Facebook and Threads. Analyst expectations for the top CSPs and hyperscalers in 2026 aggregate CapEx have continued to increase and now sit roughly at $600 billion, more than $200 billion higher relative to the start of the year. We see the transition to accelerated computing and generative AI across current hyperscale workloads contributing toward roughly half of our long-term opportunity. Another growth pillar is the ongoing increase in compute spend driven by foundation model builders such as Anthropic, Mistral, OpenAI, Reflection, Safe Superintelligence, Thinking Machines Lab, and xAI, all scaling compute aggressively to scale intelligence. The three scaling laws, pre-training, post-training, and inference, remain intact. In fact, we see a positive virtuous cycle emerging whereby the three scaling laws and access to compute are generating better intelligence and in turn increasing adoption and profits. OpenAI recently shared that their weekly user base has grown to 800 million. Enterprise customers has increased to 1 million, and that their gross margins were healthy. While Anthropic recently reported that its annualized run rate revenue has reached $7 billion as of last month, up from $1 billion at the start of the year. We are also witnessing a proliferation of agentic AI across various industries and tasks. Companies such as Cursor, Anthropic, Open Evidence, Epic, and Abridge are experiencing a surge in user growth as they supercharge the existing workforce, delivering unquestionable ROI for coders and healthcare professionals. The world's most important enterprise software platforms like ServiceNow, CrowdStrike, and SAP are integrating NVIDIA's accelerated computing and AI stack. Our new partner, Palantir, is supercharging the incredibly popular ontology platform with NVIDIA CUDA-X libraries and AI models for the first time. Previously, like most enterprise software platforms, ontology runs only on CPUs. Lowe's is leveraging the platform to build supply chain agility, reducing costs and improving customer satisfaction. Enterprises broadly are leveraging AI to boost productivity, increase efficiency, and reduce cost. RBC is leveraging agentic AI to drive significant analyst productivity, slashing report generation time from hours to minutes. AI and digital twins are helping Unilever accelerate content creation by 2x and cut costs by 50%. And Salesforce's engineering team has seen at least 30% productivity increase in new code development after adopting Cursor. This past quarter, we announced AI factory and infrastructure projects amounting to an aggregate of 5 million GPUs. This demand spans every market: CSPs, sovereigns, model builders, enterprises, and supercomputing centers, and includes multiple landmark buildouts. xAI's Colossus 2, the world's first gigawatt-scale data center. Lilly's AI factory for drug discovery, the pharmaceutical industry's most powerful data center. And just today, AWS and Humane expanded their partnership, including the deployment of up to 150,000 AI accelerators, including our GB300. xAI and Humane also announced a partnership in which the two will jointly develop a network of world-class GPU data centers anchored by the flagship 500 megawatt facility. Blackwell gained further momentum in Q3 as GB300 crossed over GB200 and contributed roughly 2/3 of the total Blackwell revenue. The transition to GB300 has been seamless, with production shipments to the major cloud service providers, hyperscalers, and GPU clouds, and is already driving their growth. The Hopper platform, in its 13th quarter since inception, recorded approximately $2 billion in revenue in Q3. H20 sales were approximately $50 million. Sizable purchase orders never materialized in the quarter due to geopolitical issues and the increasingly competitive market in China. While we were disappointed in the current state that prevents us from shipping more competitive data center compute products to China, we are committed to continued engagement with the U.S. and China governments and will continue to advocate for America's ability to compete around the world. To establish a sustainable leadership position in AI computing, America must win the support of every developer and be the platform of choice for every commercial business, including those in China. The Rubin platform is on track to ramp in the second half of 2026. Powered by 7 chips, the Vera Rubin platform will once again deliver an X-factor improvement in performance relative to Blackwell. We have received silicon back from our supply chain partners and are happy to report that NVIDIA teams across the world are executing the bring up beautifully. Rubin is our 3rd generation rack scale system, substantially redefined the manufacturability while remaining compatible with Grace Blackwell. Our supply chain, data center, ecosystem, and cloud partners have now mastered the build to installation process of NVIDIA's rack architecture. Our ecosystem will be ready for a fast Rubin ramp. Our annual X-factor performance leap increases performance per dollar while driving down computing costs for our customers. The long useful life of NVIDIA's CUDA GPUs is a significant TCO advantage over accelerators. CUDA's compatibility and our massive installed base extend the life of NVIDIA systems well beyond their original estimated useful life. For more than 2 decades, we have optimized the CUDA ecosystem, improving existing workloads, accelerating new ones, and increasing throughput with every software release. Most accelerators without CUDA and NVIDIA's time-tested and versatile architecture became obsolete within a few years as model technologies evolve. Thanks to CUDA, the A100 GPUs we shipped 6 years ago are still running at full utilization today, powered by vastly improved software stack. We have evolved over the past 25 years from a gaming GPU company to now an AI data center infrastructure company. Our ability to innovate across the CPU, the GPU, networking, and software, and ultimately drive down cost per token is unmatched across the industry. Our networking business, purpose-built for AI, and now the largest in the world, generated revenue of $8.2 billion, up 162% year over year, with NVLink, InfiniBand, and Spectrum-X Ethernet all contributing to growth. We are winning in data center networking as the majority of AI deployments now include our switches with Ethernet GPU attach rates roughly on par with InfiniBand. Meta, Microsoft, Oracle, and xAI are building gigawatt AI factories with Spectrum-X Ethernet switches, and each will run its operating system of choice, highlighting the flexibility and openness of our platform. We recently introduced Spectrum XGS, a scale-across technology that enables gigascale AI factories. NVIDIA is the only company with AI scale up, scale out, and scale across platforms, reinforcing our unique position in the market as the AI infrastructure provider. Customer interest in NVLink Fusion continues to grow. We announced a strategic collaboration with Fujitsu in October, where we will integrate Fujitsu's CPUs and NVIDIA GPUs via NVLink Fusion, connecting our large ecosystems. We also announced a collaboration with Intel to develop multiple generations of custom data center and PC products, connecting NVIDIA and Intel's ecosystems using NVLink. This week at Supercomputing 25, ARM announced that it will be integrating NVLink IP for customers to build CPU SoCs that connect with NVIDIA. Currently on its 5th generation, NVLink is the only proven scale-up technology available on the market today. In the latest MLPerf training results, Blackwell Ultra delivered 5x faster time to train than Hopper. NVIDIA swept every benchmark. Notably, NVIDIA is the only training platform to leverage FP4 while meeting the MLPerf's strict accuracy standards. Blackwell achieved the highest performance and lowest total cost of ownership across every model and use case. Particularly important is Blackwell's NVLink's performance on a mixture of experts, the architecture for the world's most popular reasoning models. On DeepSeek R1, Blackwell delivered 10x higher performance per watt and 10x lower cost per token versus H200, a huge generational leap fueled by our extreme co-design approach. NVIDIA Dynamo, an open source, low latency modular inference framework, has now been adopted by every major cloud service provider. Leveraging Dynamo's enablement and disaggregated inference, the resulting increase in performance of complex AI models such as MOE models, AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and OCI have boosted AI inference performance for enterprise cloud customers. We are working on a strategic partnership with OpenAI, focused on helping them build and deploy at least 10 gigawatts of AI data centers. In addition, we have the opportunity to invest in the company. We serve OpenAI through their cloud partners, Microsoft Azure, OCI, and CoreWeave. We will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. As they continue to scale, we are delighted to support the company to add self-build infrastructure, and we are working toward a definitive agreement and are excited to support OpenAI's growth. Yesterday, we celebrated an announcement with Anthropic. For the first time, Anthropic is adopting NVIDIA, and we are establishing a deep technology partnership to support Anthropic's fast growth. We will collaborate to optimize Anthropic models for CUDA and deliver the best possible performance, efficiency, and TCO. We will also optimize future NVIDIA architectures for Anthropic workloads. Anthropic's compute commitment is initially including up to 1 gigawatt of compute capacity with Grace Blackwell and Vera Rubin systems. Our strategic investments in Anthropic, Mistral, OpenAI, Reflection, Thinking Machines, and other represent partnerships that grow the NVIDIA CUDA AI ecosystem and enable every model to run optimally on NVIDIA's everywhere. We will continue to invest strategically while preserving our disciplined approach to cash flow management. Physical AI is already a multi-billion-dollar business addressing a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity and the next leg of growth for NVIDIA. Leading US manufacturers and robotics innovators are leveraging NVIDIA's 3-computer architecture to train on NVIDIA, test on Omniverse computer, and deploy real-world AI on Jetson robotic computers. PTC and Siemens introduced new services that bring Omniverse-powered digital twin workflows to their extensive installed base of customers. Companies including Belden, Caterpillar, Foxconn, Lucid Motors, Toyota, TSMC, and Wistron are building Omniverse digital twin factories to accelerate AI-driven manufacturing and automation. Agility Robotics, Amazon Robotics, Figure, and Skilled at AI are building our platform, tapping offerings such as NVIDIA Cosmos World Foundation Models for development, Omniverse for simulation and validation, and Jetson to power next-generation intelligent robots. We remain focused on building resiliency and redundancy in our global supply chain. Last month, in partnership with TSMC, we celebrated the first Blackwell wafer produced on U.S. soil. We will continue to work with Foxconn, Wistron, Amkor, Spill, and others to grow our presence in the U.S. over the next 4 years. Gaming revenue was $4.3 billion, up 30% year on year, driven by strong demand as Blackwell momentum continued. End market sell-through remains robust, and channel inventories are at normal levels heading into the holiday season. Steam recently broke its concurrent user record with 42 million gamers, while thousands of fans packed the GeForce Gamer Festival in South Korea to celebrate 25 years of GeForce. NVIDIA Pro Visualization has evolved into computers for engineers and developers, whether for graphics or for AI. Professional visualization revenue was $760 million, up 56%.
I just found this new coffee from Happy, and you have to try them. It's so good. This cold brew right here is super smooth and not bitter. Plus, it has notes of chocolate. They also have 3 decadent lattes that are
Spark, the world's smallest AI supercomputer, built on a small configuration of Grace Blackwell. Automotive revenue was $592 million, up 32% year over year, primarily driven by self-driving solutions. We are partnering with Uber to scale the world's largest Level 4 ready autonomous fleet, built on the new NVIDIA Hyperion L4 robotaxi reference architecture. Moving to the rest of the P&L, GAAP gross margins were 73.4% and non-GAAP gross margins was 73.6%, exceeding our outlook. Gross margins increased sequentially due to our data center mix, improved cycle time, and cost structure. GAAP operating expenses were up 8% sequentially and up 11% on non-GAAP basis. The growth was driven by infrastructure compute, as well as higher compensation and benefits in engineering development costs. Non-GAAP effective tax rate for the third quarter was just over 17%, higher than our guidance of 16.5% due to the strong U.S. revenue. On our balance sheet, inventory grew 32% quarter over quarter, while supply commitments increased 63% sequentially. We are preparing for significant growth ahead and feel good about our ability to execute against our opportunity set. Okay, let me turn to the outlook for the fourth quarter. Total revenue is expected to be $65 billion, plus or minus 2%. At the midpoint, our outlook implies 14% sequential growth, driven by continued momentum in the Blackwell architecture. Consistent with last quarter, we are not assuming any data center compute revenue from China. GAAP and non-GAAP gross margins are expected to be 74.8% and 75%, respectively, plus or minus 50 basis points. Looking ahead to fiscal year 2027, input costs are on the rise, but we are working to hold gross margins in the mid-70s. GAAP and non-GAAP operating expenses are expected to be approximately $6.7 billion and $5 billion, respectively. GAAP and non-GAAP other income and expenses are expected to be an income of approximately $500 million, excluding gains and losses from non-marketable and publicly held equity securities. GAAP and non-GAAP tax rates are expected to be 17%, plus or minus 1%, excluding any discrete items. At this time, let me turn the call over to Jensen for him to say a few words.
Thanks, Colette. There's been a lot of talk about an AI bubble. From our vantage point, we see something very different. As a reminder, NVIDIA is unlike any other accelerator. We excel at every phase of AI, from pre-training and post-training to inference. And with our 2-decade investment in CUDA-X acceleration libraries, we are also exceptional at science and engineering simulations, computer graphics, structured data processing, to classical machine learning. The world is undergoing 3 massive platform shifts at once. The first time since the dawn of Moore's Law. NVIDIA is uniquely addressing each of the 3 transformations. The first transition is from CPU general purpose computing to GPU accelerated computing, as Moore's Law slows. The world has a massive investment in non-AI software, from data processing to science and engineering simulations, representing hundreds of billions of dollars in cloud computing spend each year. Many of these applications, which ran once exclusively on CPUs, are now rapidly shifting to CUDA GPUs. Accelerated computing has reached a tipping point. Secondly, AI has also reached a tipping point and is transforming existing applications while enabling entirely new ones. For existing applications, generative AI is replacing classical machine learning in search ranking, recommender systems, ad targeting, click-through prediction, to content moderation, the very foundations of hyperscale infrastructure. Meta's GEM, a foundation model for ad recommendations trained on large-scale GPU clusters, exemplifies this shift. In Q2, Meta reported over a 5% increase in ad conversions on Instagram and 3% gain on Facebook feed, driven by generative AI-based GEM. Transitioning to generative AI represents substantial revenue gains for hyperscalers. Now a new wave is rising. Agentic AI systems, capable of reasoning, planning, and using tools. From coding assistants like Cursor and Claude Code to radiology tools like iDoc, legal assistants like Harvey, and AI chauffeurs like Tesla FSD and Waymo. These systems mark the next frontier of computing. The fastest growing companies in the world today, OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, Google, Cursor, Lovable, Replit, Cognition AI, OpenEvidence, Abridged, Tesla, are pioneering agentic AI. So there are 3 massive platform shifts. The transition to accelerated computing is foundational and necessary, essential in a post-Moore's Law era. The transition to generative AI is transformational and necessary, supercharging existing applications and business models. And the transition to agentic and physical AI will be revolutionary, giving rise to new applications, companies, products, and services. As you consider infrastructure investments, consider these 3 fundamental dynamics. Each will contribute to infrastructure growth in the coming years. NVIDIA is chosen because our singular architecture enables all 3 transitions, and does so for any form and modality of AI across all industries, across every phase of AI, across all of the diverse computing needs in a cloud, and also from cloud to enterprise to robots. One architecture. Toshiya, back to you.
We will now open the call for questions. Operator, would you please poll for questions?
Thank you. At this time, I would like to remind everyone, in order to ask a question, press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster. As a reminder, please limit yourself to 1 question. Thank you. Your first question comes from Joseph Moore with Morgan Stanley. Your line is open.
Great, thank you. I wonder if you could update us. You talked about the $500 billion of revenue for Blackwell plus Rubin in 25 and 26 at GTC. At that time, you had talked about $150 billion of that already having been shipped. So as the quarter's wrapped up, are those still kind of the general parameters that there's $350 billion in the next kind of 14 months or so? And I would assume over that time you haven't seen all the demand that there is. There's any possibility of upside to those numbers as we move forward?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I'll start first with a response here on that. Yes, that's correct. We are working into our 500 billion forecast, and we are on track for that as we have finished some of the quarters, and now we have several quarters now in front of us to take us through the end of calendar year 26. The number will grow, and we will achieve, I'm sure, additional needs for compute that will be shippable by fiscal year 26. So we shipped 50 billion this quarter, but we would be not finished if we didn't say that we'll probably be taking more orders. For example, just even today, our announcements with KSA, and that agreement in itself is 400 to 600,000 more GPUs over 3 years. Anthropic is also net new. So there's definitely an opportunity for us to have more on top of the 500 billion that we announced.
The next question comes from CJ Muse with Cantor Fitzgerald. Your line is open.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for taking the question. There's clearly a great deal of consternation around the magnitude of AI infrastructure build-outs and the ability to fund such plans and the ROI. Yet, at the same time, you're talking about being sold out. Every stood-up GP is taken. The AI world hasn't seen the enormous benefit yet, from B300, never mind Rubin, and Gemini 3 just announced Grok 5 coming soon. And so the question is this: when you look at that as the backdrop, do you see a realistic path for supply to catch up with demand over the next 12 to 18 months, or do you think it can extend beyond that time frame?
Well, as you know, we've done a really good job planning our supply chain. NVIDIA's supply chain basically includes every technology company in the world. And TSMC and their packaging and our memory vendors and memory partners and all of our system ODMs have done a really good job planning with us. And we were planning for a big year. We've seen for some time the 3 transitions that I spoke about just a second ago: accelerated computing from general purpose computing. And it's really important to recognize that AI is not just agentic AI, but generative AI is transforming the way that hyperscalers did the work that they used to do on CPUs. Generative AI made it possible for them to move search and recommender systems and add recommendations and targeting. All of that has been moved to generative AI, and it's still transitioning. And so whether you installed NVIDIA GPUs for data processing, or you did it for generative AI for your recommender system, or you're building it for agentic chatbots and the type of AIs that most people see when they think about AI, all of those applications are accelerated by NVIDIA. And so when you look at the totality of the spend, it's really important to think about each one of those layers. They're all growing. They're related, but not the same. But the wonderful thing is that they all run on NVIDIA GPUs. Simultaneously, because the quality of the AI models are improving so incredibly. The adoption of it in the different use cases, whether it's in code assistance, which NVIDIA uses fairly exhaustively, and we're not the only one. I mean, the fastest growing application in history, combination of Cursor and Claude Code and OpenAI's Codex and GitHub Copilot. These applications are the fastest growing in history. And it's not just used for software engineers, it's used because of vibe coding, it's used by engineers and marketeers all over companies, supply chain planners all over companies. And so I think that that's just one example, and the list goes on, whether it's open evidence and the work that they do in healthcare, or the work that's being done in digital video editing, Runway. And I mean, the number of really, really exciting startups that are taking advantage of generative AI and agentic AI is growing quite rapidly. And not to mention, we're all using it a lot more. And so all of these exponentials, not to mention, just today I was reading a text from Demis, and he was saying that pre-training and post-training are fully intact, and Gemini 3 takes advantage of the scaling laws and received a huge jump in quality performance, model performance. And so we're seeing all of these exponentials kind of running at the same time, and just always go back to first principles and think about what's happening from each one of the dynamics that I mentioned before. General purpose computing to accelerated computing, generative AI replacing classical machine learning, and of course, agentic AI, which is a brand new category.
The next question comes from Vivek Arya with Bank of America Securities. Your line is open.
Thanks for taking my question. I'm curious, what assumptions are you making on NVIDIA content per gigawatt in that 500 billion number? Because we have heard numbers as low as 25 billion per gigawatt of content to as high as 30 or 40 billion per gigawatt. So I'm curious what power and what dollar per gigawatt assumptions you are making as part of that 500 billion number. And then longer term, Jensen, the 3 to 4 trillion in data center by 2030 was mentioned. How much of that do you think will require vendor financing, and how much of that can be supported by cash flows of your large customers or governments or enterprises? Thank you.
In each generation, from Ampere to Hopper, from Hopper to Blackwell, Blackwell to Rubin, our part of the data center increases, and Hopper generation was probably something along the lines of 20 some odd, 20 to 25. Blackwell generation, Grace Blackwell particularly, is probably 30 to 30, say 30 plus or minus, and then Rubin is probably higher than that. And in each one of these generations, the speed up is X factors, and therefore their TCO, the customer TCO, improves by X factors. And the most important thing is, in the end, you still only have 1 gigawatt of power. 1 gigawatt data centers, 1 gigawatt of power, and therefore performance per watt, the efficiency of your architecture, is incredibly important. And the efficiency of your architecture can't be brute forced. There is no brute forcing about it. That 1 gigawatt translates directly, your performance per watt translates directly, absolutely directly to your revenues, which is the reason why choosing the right architecture matters so much now. The world doesn't have an excess of anything to squander. And so we have to be really, really, we use this concept called co-design across our entire stack, across the frameworks and models, across the entire data center, even power and cooling optimized across the entire supply chain in our ecosystem. And so each generation, our economic contribution will be greater, our value delivered will be greater, but the most important thing is our energy efficiency per watt is going to be extraordinary every single generation. With respect to growing into continuing to grow, our customers' financing is up to them. We see the opportunity to grow for quite some time. And remember, today, most of the focus has been on the hyperscalers. And one of the areas that is really misunderstood about the hyperscalers is that the investment on NVIDIA GPUs not only improves their scale, speed, and cost from general purpose computing. That's number one, because Moore's law scaling has really slowed. Moore's law is about driving costs down. It's about deflationary cost, the incredible deflationary cost of computing over time, but that has slowed. Therefore, a new approach is necessary for them to keep driving the cost down. Going to NVIDIA GPU computing is really the best way to do so. The second is revenue boosting in their current business models. Recommender systems drive the world's hyperscalers. Every single, whether it's watching short form videos or recommending books or recommending the next item in your basket to recommending ads to recommending news it's all about recommenders. The internet has trillions of pieces of content. How could they possibly figure out what to put in front of you in your little tiny screen unless they have really sophisticated recommender systems to do so? Well, that has gone generative AI. So the first two things that I just said, hundreds of billions of dollars of CapEx is going to have to be invested, is fully cash flow funded. What is above it, therefore, is agentic AI. This is revenue, is net new consumption, but it's also net new applications. And some of the applications I mentioned before, but these new applications are also the fastest growing applications in history. Okay, so I think that you're going to see that once people start to appreciate what is actually happening under the water, if you will, from the simplistic view of what's happening to CapEx investment, recognizing there's these three dynamics. And then lastly, remember, we were just talking about the American CSPs. Each country will fund their own infrastructure. And you have multiple countries, you have multiple industries. Most of the world's industries haven't really engaged agentic AI yet, and they're about to. All the names of companies that we're working with, whether it's autonomous vehicle companies or digital twins for physical AI for factories, and the number of factories and warehouses being built around the world, just the number of digital biology startups that are being funded so that we could accelerate drug discovery. All of those different industries are now getting engaged, and they're going to do their own fundraising. And so don't just look at the hyperscalers as a way to build out for the future. You got to look at the world. You got to look at all the different industries, and enterprise computing is going to fund their own industry.
The next question comes from Ben Reitzes with Melius. Your line is open.
Hey, thanks a lot. Jensen, I wanted to ask you about cash. Speaking of $500 billion, you may generate about $500 billion in free cash flow over the next couple of years. What are your plans for that cash? How much goes to buyback versus investing in the ecosystem? And how do you look at investing in the ecosystem? I think there's just a lot of confusion out there about how these deals work and your criteria for doing those, like the Anthropic, the OpenAIs, et cetera. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, appreciate the question. Of course, using cash to fund our growth. No company has ever grown at the scale that we're talking about and have the connection and the depth and the breadth of supply chain that NVIDIA has. The reason why our entire customer base can rely on us is because we've secured a really resilient supply chain, and we have the balance sheet to support them. When we make purchases, our suppliers can take it to the bank. When we make forecasts and we plan with them, they take us seriously because of our balance sheet. We're not making up the offtake. We know what our offtake is, and because they've been planning with us for so many years, our reputation and our credibility is incredible. And so So it takes really strong balance sheet to do that, to support the level of growth and the rate of growth and the magnitude associated with that. So that's number one. The second thing, of course, we're going to continue to do stock buybacks. We're going to continue to do that. But with respect to the investments, this is really, really important work that we do. All of the investments that we've done so far, well, all the way, period, is associated with expanding the reach of CUDA, expanding the ecosystem. If you look at the work that the investments that we did with OpenAI, it's, of course, that relationship we've had since 2016. I delivered the first AI supercomputer ever made to OpenAI. And so we've had a close and wonderful relationship with OpenAI since then. And everything that OpenAI does runs on NVIDIA today. So all the clouds that they deploy in, whether it's training and inference, runs NVIDIA, and we love working with them. The partnership that we have with them is one so that we could work even deeper from a technical perspective, so that we could.
My story is about lifting up my community.
My story is about paying it forward.
It's growing incredibly fast. And don't just look at what is said in the press. Look at all the ecosystem partners and all the developers that are connected to OpenAI. And they're all driving consumption of it. And the quality of the AI that's being produced, huge step up since a year ago. And so the quality of response is extraordinary. So we invest in OpenAI for a deep partnership in co-development to expand our ecosystem and to support their growth. And of course, rather than giving up a share of our company, we get a share of their company. And we invested in them in one of the most consequential once-in-a-generation company that we have a share of. And so I fully expect that investment to translate to extraordinary returns. Now, in the case of Anthropic, this is the first time that Anthropic will be on NVIDIA's architecture. The first time Anthropic will be on NVIDIA's architecture. Is the second most successful AI in the world in terms of total number of users. But in enterprise, they're doing incredibly well. Claude Code is doing incredibly well. Claude is doing incredibly well all over the world's enterprise. And now we have the opportunity to have a deep partnership with them and bringing Claude onto the NVIDIA platform. And so what do we have now? NVIDIA's architecture, taking a step back, NVIDIA's architecture, NVIDIA's platform is the singular platform in the world that runs every AI model. We run OpenAI, we run Anthropic, we run xAI. Because of our deep partnership with Elon and xAI, we were able to bring that opportunity to Saudi Arabia, to the KSA, so that Humane could also be a hosting opportunity for xAI. We run xAI, we run Gemini, we run thinking machines. Let's see, what else do we run? We run them all. And so not to mention, we run the science models, the biology models, DNA models, gene models, chemical models, and all the different fields around the world. It's not just cognitive AI that the world uses. AI is impacting every single industry. And so we have the ability, through the ecosystem investments that we make, to deeply partner on a technical basis with some of the best companies, most brilliant companies in the world. We're expanding the reach of our ecosystem, and we're getting a share and investment in what will be a very successful company, oftentimes once in a generation company. And so that's our investment thesis.
The next question comes from Jim Schneider with Goldman Sachs. Your line is open.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my question. In the past, you've talked about roughly 40% of your shipments tied to AI inference. I'm wondering, as you look forward into next year, where do you expect that percentage could go in say, a year's time? And can we maybe address the Rubin CPX product you expect to introduce next year and contextualize that? How big of the overall TAM you expect that can take, and maybe talk about some of the target customer applications for that specific product? Thank you.
CPX is designed for long context type of workload generation. And so long context, basically, before you start generating answers, you have to read a lot, basically, long context. And it could be a bunch of PDFs, it could be watching a bunch of videos, studying 3D images, so on and so forth. You have to absorb the context. And so CPX is designed for long context type of workloads. And its perf per dollar is excellent. Its perf per watt is excellent. And which made me forget the first part of the question.
Inferencing.
Oh, inference. Yeah, there are 3 scaling laws that are scaling at the same time. The first scaling law, called pre-training, continues to be very effective. And the second is post-training. Post-training basically has found incredible algorithms for improving an AI's ability to break a problem down and solve a problem step by step. And post-training is scaling exponentially. Basically, the more compute you apply to a model, the smarter it is, the more intelligent it is. And then the third is inference. Inference, because of chain of thought, because of reasoning capabilities, AIs are essentially reading, thinking before it answers. And the amount of computation necessary as a result of those 3 things has gone completely exponential. I think that it's hard to know exactly what the percentage will be at any given point in time and who. But of course, our hope is that inference is a very large part of the market, because if inference is large, then what it suggests is that people are using it in more applications, and they're using it more frequently. And that's, we should all hope for inference to be very large. And this is where Grace Blackwell is just an order of magnitude better, more advanced than anything in the world. The second best platform is H200. And it's very clear now that GB200, GB300, because of NVLink 72, the scale-up network that we have, achieve, and you saw, and Colette talked about in the semi-analysis benchmark, it's the largest single inference benchmark ever done. And GB200, NVLink 72, is 10 to 15 times higher performance. And so that's a big step up. It's going to take a long time before somebody is able to take that on. And our leadership there is surely multi-year. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that inference becomes a very big deal. Our leadership in inference is extraordinary.
The next question comes from Timothy Arcuri with UBS. Your line is open.
Thanks a lot. Jensen, many of your customers are pursuing behind-the-meter power, but what's the single biggest bottleneck that worries you that could constrain your growth? Is it power, or maybe it's financing, or maybe it's something else like memory or even foundry? Thanks a lot.
Well, these are all issues, and they're all constraints. And the reason for that, when you're growing at the rate that we are and the scale that we are, how could anything be easy? What NVIDIA is doing obviously has never been done before. And we've created a whole new industry. On the one hand, we are transitioning computing from general purpose and classical or traditional computing to accelerated computing and AI. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, we've created a whole new industry called AI factories. The idea that in order for software to run, you need these factories to generate every single token instead of retrieving information that was pre-created. And so I think this whole transition requires extraordinary scale. And all the way from the supply chain, of course, the supply chain, we have much better visibility and control over, because obviously we're incredibly good at managing our supply chain. We have great partners that we've worked with for 33 years. And so the supply chain part of it, we're quite confident. Now, looking down our supply chain, we've now established partnerships with so many players in land and power and shell, and of course financing. None of these things are easy, but they're all tractable and they're all solvable things. And the most important thing that we have to do is do a good job planning. We plan up the supply chain, down the supply chain. We have established a whole lot of partners, and so we have a lot of routes to market. And very importantly, our architecture has to deliver the best value to the customers that we have. And so at this point, I'm very confident that NVIDIA's architecture is the best performance per TCO. It is the best performance per watt, and therefore for any amount of energy that is delivered, our architecture will drive the most revenues. And I think the increasing rate of our success, I think that we're more successful this year at this point than we were last year at this point. The number of customers coming to us and the number of platforms coming to us after they've explored others is increasing, not decreasing. And so I think I think all of that is just, all the things that I've been telling you over the years are really coming true and or becoming evident.
The next question comes from Stacy Raskin with Bernstein Research. Your line is open.
Questions. Colette, I had some questions on margins. You said for next year you're working to hold them in the mid-70s. So I guess, first of all, what are the biggest cost increases? Is it just memory or is it something else? What are you doing to work toward that? How much is cost optimizations versus pre-buys versus pricing? And then also, how should we think about OpEx growth next year, given the revenues seem likely to grow materially from where we're running right now?
Thanks, Stacey. Let me see if I can start with remembering where we were with the current fiscal year that we're in. Remember, earlier this year, we indicated that through cost improvements and mix that we would exit the year in our gross margins in the mid-70s. We've achieved that and getting ready to also execute that in Q4. So now it's time for us to communicate where are we working right now in terms of next year. Next year, there are input prices that are well known in the industries that we need to work through. And our systems are by no means very easy to work with. There are a tremendous amount of components, many different parts of it as we think about that. So we're taking all of that into account, but we do believe if we look at working again on cost improvements, cycle time, and mix, that we will work to try and hold at our gross margins in the mid-70s. So that's our overall plan for gross margin. Your second question is around OpEx. And right now, our goal in terms of OpEx is to really make sure that we are innovating with our engineering teams, with all of our business teams, to create more and more systems for this market. As you know, right now we have a new architecture coming out, and that means they are quite busy in order to meet that goal. And so we're going to continue to see our investments on innovating more and more, both our software, both our systems, and our hardware to do so. I'll turn it to Jensen if he wants to add in a couple more comments.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think the only thing that I would add is remember that we plan, we forecast, we plan, and we negotiate with our supply chain well in advance. Our supply chain have known for quite a long time our requirements, and they've known for quite a long time our demand, and we've been working with them and negotiating with them for quite a long time. And so I think the recent surge, obviously quite significant, but remember our supply chain has been working with us for a very long time. And so in many cases we've secured a lot of supply for ourselves because obviously they're working with the largest company in the world in doing so, and we've also been working closely with them on the financial aspects of it and securing forecasts and plans and so on and so forth. So I think all of that has worked out well for us.
Your final question comes from the line of Aaron Rakers with Wells Fargo. Your line is open.
Yeah, thanks for taking the question. Jensen, the question's for you. As you think about the Anthropic deal that was announced and just the overall breadth of your customers, I'm curious if your thoughts around the role that AI ASICs or dedicated XPUs play in these architecture build-outs has changed at all. Have you seen, I think you've been fairly adamant in the past that some of these programs never really see deployments, but I'm curious if we're at a point where maybe that's even changed more in favor of just GPU architecture. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I really appreciate the question. So first of all, you're not competing against teams. You're against a company. You're competing against teams, and there just aren't that many teams in the world who are extraordinary at building these incredibly complicated things. Back in the Hopper day and the Ampere days, we would build one GPU. That's the definition of an accelerated AI system. But today, we've got to build entire racks, three different types of switches: a scale up, a scale out, and a scale across switch. And it takes a lot more than one chip to build a compute node anymore. Everything about that computing system, because AI needs to have memory, AI didn't used to have memory at all. Now it has to remember things. The amount of memory and context it has is gigantic. The memory architecture implications is incredible. The diversity of models, from mixture of experts to dense models to diffusion models to autoregressive, not to mention, biological models that obeys the laws of physics. The list of different types of models has exploded in the last several years. And so the challenge is the complexity of the problem is much higher. The diversity of AI models is incredibly large. And so this is where, if I will say, the 5 things that makes us special, if you will. The first thing I would say that makes us special is that we accelerate every phase of that transition. That's the first phase. That CUDA allows us to have CUDA-X for transitioning from general purpose accelerated computing. We're incredibly good at generative AI. We're incredibly good at agentic AI. So every single phase of that, every single layer of that transition, we are excellent at. You can invest in one architecture, use it across the board. You can use one architecture and not worry about the changes in the workload across those 3 phases. That's number 1. Number 2, we're excellent at every phase of AI. Everybody's always known that we're incredibly good at pre-training. We're obviously very good at post-training, and we're incredibly good, as it turns out, at inference, because inference is really, really hard. How could thinking be easy? People think that inference is one shot and therefore it's easy. Anybody could approach the market that way, but it turns out to be the hardest of all, because thinking, as it turns out, is quite hard. We're great at every phase of AI, the second thing. The third thing is we're now the only architecture in the world that runs every AI model, every frontier AI model. We run open source AI models incredibly well. We run science models, biology models, robotics models. We run every single model. We're the only architecture in the world that can claim that. It doesn't matter whether you're autoregressive or diffusion-based. We run everything. And we run it for every major platform, as I just mentioned. So we run every model. And then the fourth thing I would say is that we're in every cloud. The reason why developers love us is because we're literally everywhere. We're in every cloud. We're in every, we could even make you a little tiny cloud called DGX Spark. And so we're in every computer. We're everywhere, from cloud to on-prem to robotic systems, edge devices, PCs, you name it. One architecture, things just work. It's incredible. And then the last thing, and this is probably the most important thing, the fifth thing, is if you are a cloud service provider, if you're a new company like Humane, if you're a new company like CoreWeave or Nscale or Nebius, or OCI for that matter, the reason why NVIDIA is the best platform for you is because our offtake is so diverse. We can help you with offtake. It's not about just putting a random ASIC into a data center. Where's the offtake coming from? Where's the diversity coming from? Where's the resilience coming from? The versatility of the architecture coming from, the diversity of capability coming from. NVIDIA has such incredibly good offtake because our ecosystem is so large. So these 5 things, every phase of acceleration and transition, every phase of AI, every model, every cloud to on-prem, and of course, finally, it all leads to offtake.
Thank you. I will now turn the call to Toshiya Hari for closing remarks.
In closing, please note we will be at the UBS Global Technology and AI Conference on December 2nd, and our earnings call to discuss the results of our fourth quarter of fiscal 2026 is scheduled for February 25th. Thank you for joining us today. Operator, please go ahead and close the call.
All right, and just like that, the conference call is officially over. A little bit of overshoot there with about 5 minutes after the top of the hour at 6. But that's it. NVIDIA earnings are in the rearview mirror at this point. The market lives on to trade another day. We do not have any major breakdown in the sense of, oh my goodness, it's a crash and, NVIDIA earnings missed and the market's going to go to zero and it's the end of the world. No, I would say that the earnings numbers looked fine. I'd say the guidance from Jensen going forward, it was optimistic, but he did seem like a little tired. Not literally Jensen himself being tired, but just the reiteration of the same thing we already got. I don't know if you guys were looking at the chat as I was typing there for a second, but it was just a rehash of basically GTC Developer Day, not Developer Day, but GTC Roadshow that happened here in DC just a couple of weeks ago where they partnered with like everybody. We had that graphic up on the screen not too long ago. Think about Nokia partnership for 6G, TSMC, just all the usual names. Palantir was in that lineup, right? Eli Lilly for healthcare, Caterpillar for industrial, and the list goes on. There's a ton of reference to like these other companies and how these partnerships are kind of fueling NVIDIA as it works forward through the next phase, really, of now that they're everywhere. This is another thing that I thought was a little bit overplayed and tired from Jensen there. It was like, we're everywhere. We're the best. We're in every cloud. We run every model. We do every this, every that. Well, if that's the case, right, then like what's next, right? Where do you go from there? Which is why I think that this transition to that partnership is probably the next phase of, how they build out, quote unquote value for the company and owning little bits and pieces of, players who use their tools, right? So that is that. I don't know what's up with that from Danny Stange in the chat, but I mean, it's after hours, but boy, oh boy, we're professional up here. So let's just get you out of here. No need to be saying things like that. How do I just block the user? Block user on this channel. Done. Sayonara. Nice knowing you. So NVIDIA in the after hours. Now let's like flip back over to price action a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and like, I took some notes on the conference call. I won't lie. I was looking at a couple things there. Nothing that was overwhelming. I think Meta was mentioned positively, as well as like every other company they've partnered with. But Meta in particular got a lot of love on their generative AI ad algorithm, right? They talked quite a bit about that. Cloud is fully sold out, full utilization across all the different chips and offerings there. Analysts think that CapEx is sitting about $600 billion more than the start of the year, or is sitting at $600 billion, more than $200 billion higher than the start of the year. It's about half. It represents about half of the growth opportunity. So I guess they're kind of forecasting another $600 billion, which is just kind of wild to think about. So, getting up there towards that $1 trillion mark. $500 billion in Rubin and Blackwell chips are in the pipeline in terms of revenue there. There was also mention of the A100 chips from 6 years ago still running at 100% utilization. So that's kind of interesting. 6-year depreciation cycle could be, they said, hey, it's kind of still working fine. We don't need to rebuild that quite yet. What else was a big watch or a big comment in there? They talked about Blackwell chips, the first couple of them being made on U.S. soil. Now that, of course, there's these incentives to build in America here. The forecast revenue for going forward was $65 billion plus or minus 2%. Midpoint was 14% sequential growth based on Blackwell alone. And they're not assuming any China revenue in those particular figures, so that's kind of interesting there. Margins are set to continue increasing here in the next quarter, going up to 74%, 74.8%, plus or minus 50 basis points on a gap measure, which is pretty impressive. They did note impact of input costs rising. Those are kind of the main things towards the end on the forward-looking guidance. Jensen pretty much came in, talked about his one architecture supporting everything from generative AI, agentic AI, physical AI. AI is basically not in a bubble, and he said he sees it as that virtuous cycle. So, the stock is higher, and we do have to give credit where credit is due. We're going to be gapping up and over as of right now. Obviously, a lot of time between now and 9:30 when the market opens, but we are slated to open on a gap up. If price is literally unchanged from now to 9:30 over the daily 20 SMA, kind of a big deal here.
Stop using ChatGPT and Canva like children's toys. Here's how to use them right.
Full screen here and take a look at the hourly chart. We don't want the extended hours turned on, so let's just unhighlight that. Remember, our forecast open is currently right around this white arrow right here. So what does this do in terms of some levels? Well, number one, the market, or at least I should say NVIDIA, never really made it past the upper edge of the market maker expected move. So options market makers will win again. IV Crush is going to kill anybody who was a call buyer as we came into the close of today's session. If you went out long calls, just not really your day. The call wall still intact at 200. Once again, market makers will win that battle. As we look forward to possible levels, though, turning the levels back on, an open at this spot now really means that we need to stay over Friday's high, right? Friday's high to me is the next major spot. I would honestly bring this 192 level down closer to about 191, about $1 lower. Let's bring this down by a hair. I'd say 191 is the key hold for NVIDIA headed into tomorrow. If we could stay over Friday's rally high, that could start to set up, demand down here, building out some kind of rotation, at least back to the neckline of this double top. So that's kind of interest to me if this NVIDIA chart is going to show improve in the upward direction. If we fade back under 191, I don't want to call it dead money, but I just think we're in store for a much rougher end of the year here with NVIDIA not really allowing the market to get some lift off again. You can see with the ES futures opening back up, it's actually 610. Beautiful timing. Let's just quickly take a peek at our ES futures. They're opening higher. We're getting a little bit of lift in here based on the premise of NVIDIA earnings being positive. However, if I just go to an hourly chart on the ES futures, I do just want to reinforce and point out, let's just bring this down a little bit. There we go. I just want to point out, right, that this is still an hourly downtrend. This is still the zone where lower highs can build. And even if the hourly trend does flip to up, and we would know this tomorrow, if we get something that looks like this, taking out the overnight high, previous day high, then the 4-hour lower high is still available here. 4-hour lower high available up against roughly that 6,800 spot. That's a really funky looking 6, but you get the idea. 6,800 can yield that lower high, which would keep the pressure on for a sustained downtrend still on the higher time frames, right? If I just go back to the 4-hour for a moment, I think we can all agree, right? This is that exact spot. Even if you go rally here, highs, lower highs, great spot for a potential lower high. We are in the context of a market that has reversed. It is in a downtrend via this lower low, and therefore, right, the name of the game is that any counter trend moves, in this case up, are in service to setting the next lower high to continue in the downward direction. So a lot hinged on tonight's earnings report from NVIDIA. I'm glad that you guys could make it out this afternoon to hang out and spend a little bit of your afternoon with us here up in the office, but we're probably going to wind it down on that note, take a quick break, and then probably do an abbreviated version of the midweek market update headed into this evening, and then we'll just reconvene tomorrow morning for another installation of the pre-market prep. So that's what I've got for you. Pretty ugly looking daily bar here on the ES/Spiders Cash, but if we do end up getting some kind of open higher, which as of right now we're just a hair north of today's high, if we get an open in here, I would think fade 50 SMA still pushes it lower. If we get a little bit of a rally over the 50 SMA early tomorrow morning, base case will probably be a sustained counter trend rally into the bearish engulfer high. And then when and if we get here, that's where we're looking for those failures, right? That's going to be at 674, 675. All right? That's what I've got for you. It was a fun one. Hopefully you had a decent time this evening as well. Enjoyed eating my mandarin orange on stream, annoying a couple of people with the, I guess they're more chompy than I thought. But anyways, have an awesome evening. Go relax from the markets a little bit. Don't forget to come back to the channel once the midweek market update is posted. We'll go for an abbreviated version of that since we've been on air for this NVIDIA earnings call. But that's it. That is what we've got. So big shout out to the usual suspects. We got a couple of you guys in here. Zoltan, appreciate you. Who else? Milky Fade, Talent 103, DS Stoop. We've got Karen Ortiz, Danny G, Maria P, Robert Rudoloff, Mr. G, of course. Mr. G, I'm still riding that Wednesday wave. Chomping on some watermelon from the like desk this morning. Chris K, Abhinav, good to see you. I feel like it's been a little while. Appreciate you coming out to the show, as always. Toasted Rye Bread. Cool. All right. Frank DeLeo, TR Actual. Nostradamus, I see you. I see you. Edwin Castro, what's going on? Jamie A. All right. On that note, I'm out of here. Have yourself an awesome evening. And as always, I will see you in the next one.
That's it. Pansit.